everyone. Welcome, welcome. First and foremost, thank you for braving Thursday LA traffic to make it here. Hopefully everyone found the Riveter okay. My name is Marta Statmiller. I am the Regional Director of Events for the Riveter. Who here is new to the space? Oh my God, everybody is. Well, welcome. I'm so excited. That's incredible, actually. We are so excited to be hosting this event tonight, but before we jump in, I just want to give a quick overview to who we are. The Riveter is a network of female-forward co-working spaces and community. So what that means is that we were founded by women, we are built by women, but we are for everyone. And we have multiple locations. We started in Seattle. We have a couple locations here in LA, west of Los Angeles, which is where we're at now, and then one in Marina Del Rey. And when we say co-working, I think we're all familiar with that, what that means. We have beautiful spaces for all your professional needs, whether it's dedicated offices, dedicated desks, floating desk space, or just some office space for temporary meetings, whatnot. And then we have community, which means we do a host of programming, both in the daytime and evening, public and private, that will help you in your professional and personal development. So if you have any questions about getting involved or seeing the space or learning more, we have a couple people here on site from my team. We have Madeline, Caitlin, and Alana over here, as well as myself. So please come find us and you can learn more about it. Okay. So without further ado, I want to bring up the wonderful ladies, Lindsay and Krista from Almost 30 Podcast, the reason why we're here. So excited. And we're going to get started. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thanks, Caitlin. What's up, everyone?
Hey, guys.
Hi. Just hanging with our friends.
Yeah, so glad
you're the best. We are the Almost 30 Podcast. I'm Lindsay Simsick, and this is my co-host, Krista Williams. And we're in LA. We've been traveling a bunch, but anytime we are grounded and here, we always want to make sure that we see you all and connect. And as fate would have it, Nicole was in town and promoting her new book, which is incredible. You all got one in your bag, so it's just one of those moments where we're just so grateful that we can come together, and yeah, we're just really excited.
Yes. All right, you guys got all your food and bevs. We are goodie bagged out. We ate amazing pies. Just want to thank our sponsors really fast. Do housekeeping stuff before we get started for the night. Bathrooms are right over there. Thank you so much to the Riveter. You guys have been such a great partner to us. Yes, shout out Riveter. Thank you for the space. Thank you for being great partners and for everything that you do. We have Flow Water there. We have Vital Proteins, Collagen Water, Health Aid. You guys got all your mocktails, of course. Roar Organic, which is my favorite electrolyte beverage. And we have a bunch of good stuff in your bags. Beauty Bar Chocolate, which is a no sugar bar of chocolate. I eat the whole thing, which I don't know if that counters out, but whatever. And we have Kai's, which is an amazing partner to us, and we love them. Tons of stuff in your bag, Home Nutrition, Cured, Kalumi bars, all of that. So please enjoy. That is part of being a boss bitch, is getting all this free stuff, with your ticket. So, and then you'll get a book, and we can get those signed by Nicole at the end. All right,
so what we like to do, what day is it? It's Thursday. And I know you all are coming from work. You were stuck in traffic. Barrington's a bitch. So I know it wasn't easy getting here. So we always like to ground ourselves before we start an event. So if you could just find your feet on the floor, tall spine, just kind of feeling that energy from the top of your head to the tip of your tailbone. And if you could just close your eyes for a moment. Let's start by taking just a deep breath in through your nose and let your belly expand. Opening up your mouth and just letting it go. This one's the biggest breath you've taken thus far today. Take a deep breath in. Audible exhale out. Okay, yeah. So keeping your eyes closed, I just want you to know what it feels like to be in your body in this moment. I think sometimes when we have our to-do lists on our desks, and we have deadlines and goals and friendships to nurture and family to take care of and boyfriends to find and girlfriends to find, we can feel kind of out of our bodies, and that can cause a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety. And so I'd love to just kind of land in our bodies. So if you could, just from your heart space, putting your right hand on your heart, just kind of asking for presence. And so whatever you believe in, it doesn't really matter. It's just, let me be here. Let me be open. Let me be here. And let me be open. Let the anxiety float through the top of my head and float on by, because it's not mine. Let the story I told myself this morning that sent me into chaos float on by, because it's not mine. What is true is that you made it here, that you made time for yourself, that you are in your beautiful body with a group of like-minded, conscious, curious, wonderful humans who I'm sure will be your new friends by the end. And the truth is that however you showed up tonight is perfect. And here tonight at the Riveter is exactly where you're meant to be. Take a deep breath in and just let it out. One more of those. Let it go. Beautiful. Open up your eyes. Here we are. Thank you for indulging. Thank you. I was feeling anxious earlier today. I don't know why. It's been a great week, but I just decided to meet myself exactly where I was, because I knew I was going to meet other humans here tonight who maybe woke up feeling a little bit anxious too. So just be really kind to yourself. I think that's kind of a part of being in balance, is just meeting yourself exactly where you are. You know, and every day is going to be different. Some days are going to be higher than others, and some days are going to be lower than others, but hopefully we can find a balance where we're not attached to that high or to that low. But I was thinking a lot today about how Nicole has changed my life. I read Rich Bitch a while back, and so much of what I got from Rich Bitch was a sense of balance. You know, being financially well does take that pit out of your stomach. I don't know, has anyone ever avoided looking at their bank statement? Okay, cool. Yeah. It's something that I did a lot. And it was something that really made me feel uneasy and not like myself, you know, to avoid looking at something that I was putting work into, but I didn't really want to handle it or be active in my own financial wellness, because I wasn't taught that at all. The conversation around money was, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Or I think, you know, there was a lot of shame around it. And so I didn't really know how to use a credit card till I was in college, if that. I didn't actually know how it worked in college, and I had a really interesting conversation with my parents when they saw a bill that came in. But I learned very quickly that it was my responsibility. You know, I could kind of talk shit about how I grew up and how I didn't learn this and didn't learn that, but ultimately it was my responsibility. So having Nicole as a resource in that way really gave me the confidence, and I'm still learning on a very deep level. Running a business is really humbling. You know, I am not necessarily business-minded. I like to stare at the clouds and roll around the floor and draw pictures in between what we do, and so I've really been able to learn from Krista as well, to have a partner in this. So when you're in community like this, it's great to have these conversations. You know, even though it's hard and weird to talk about money, it really is so liberating to open up, because most likely the person next to you or behind you has the same shame or the same stories, or they avoid the same things that you do. So we really just want this to be an open conversation where you feel safe to ask the questions and to come as you are.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most important things is the men want to keep us quiet. They don't want us to know. So we have to release the shame, talk about it, ask the weird questions, ask the questions that may be uncomfortable, and really get serious and realistic about it. You know, if you look into your bank account and you see a certain number, there's an energy behind whatever that number is, good or bad. You know, if you see a lot, you're like, all right. If you see very little, you're like, okay, nothing this week is going on. But it's just so important to be honest with yourself about what you're doing. And I think when we talk about wellness, you know, we're mostly a wellness podcast, spirituality, entrepreneurship, all of those things. Financial wellness is so important in that. It is part of your mental health. It is attached to when you feel good, if you have anxiety, your ability to do things. Anyone, do you guys, when you have money in your bank account, are we feeling good? We're like, we feel like less stress. And when you are tight, it is like, who spends more when they feel like they don't have money? I do. It's like one of those.
It's so weird.
It's true law of attraction. I'm like, oh God, you like buy everything so you feel broke. And I'm
Gucci
sure
makes me feel rich.
and I'm sure you guys have all been through times and periods within your life where you felt like you had more money or less money, and you probably noticed how good you felt or how stressed out you felt. So it is so good that tonight we're going to talk to Nicole about money and financial wellness, but we're also going to be talking about balance and burnout. And this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. When I was living in New York and then moved to LA, I was working a job, I quit the job, I was babysitting, serving, doing all these things, trying to find jobs, and I was really trying to figure out my life. I was just super lost, and I was coming off of a season being in New York where I was just go, go, go. I was doing drugs on the weekends, I was doing diet pills during the week, I was doing all the amazing things that lead your body to fucking hate you. And I moved to LA and had a really bad health scare. And I had burnout within my body, burnout within my mind, and burnout within my soul. And I had to really, really restart. During this time, I met Lindsay, and you know, we ended up creating Almost 30, which is what we are here to do today. But you guys definitely feel like and can have and relate to periods in time in your life where you feel burnout. Maybe it's at the end of a long day, you know, you didn't get a break, you didn't get outside, you had to eat at your desk, you had to go for a work trip, you had to do all of these things. And it just feels terrible. You feel out of control, you feel disconnected, and you feel like you're not a present person for your life. You don't feel like you're in control of it. And burnout is something that we can definitely work to mitigate against, and it's just so important to knowing your soul and being in control of your life is really the ability to find your purpose. It's the ability to make a life that you love because you are present enough for it to create it. So burnout is something we're also going to talk about, and then balance. Who here feels balanced right now? What the heck? Not one? You just quit. Literally. Audrey just quit her job because she feels balanced. She's like,
Yes,
yes.
good for you, Bob.
Good for you. You know, I the same. You know, we talk about balance. We're a health podcast, and I don't feel balanced either. And it's actually something that makes me feel really bad because it's something that I should be doing within my life if I'm preaching it, but I don't always do it. But I know that balance for me is totally different than it is for someone else. So a lot of these things that we talk about with being balanced is very, very personal to you. Your balance is going to be different than mine. My balance is going to be different than yours. So a lot of the information and tips we just have to take as valuable resources to take stock of where we are in our life and how unbalanced we may feel. So let's talk a little bit about with each other. Do some prompts. We're going to turn to our neighbor, and we are going to say how much money we have in our interest. We're going to give each other Venmos, and we're going to send each other $5. I actually have no idea how much money I have.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to turn to your neighbor. You guys, these are your new friends. Everyone here is warm, cool, kind, amazing, the best. And we are going to talk about how we feel unbalanced. All you guys said you didn't feel balanced. So what in your life is causing you to feel unbalanced? Take a few seconds.
And go. This always happens.
I know.
We should just leave.
Are you guys here for each other or are you here for us? Like, what the fuck?
Come on.
Well, you're not. You're here for Nicole.
So rude. Okay.
You guys are the best.
New friends.
All right. That was fun, right? Are you stressed? You're like, oh, I got so much to do. All right, one more question. Let's talk about money a little bit. What do you guys think of when you think of money? What are some of the emotions, maybe things at your house that, was talked about, or the relationship your family had with money, maybe as it relates to your future? What are some things you guys think about as it relates to money today? Talk to your neighbor.
Go ahead. How many of you related to the person that you talked to? Yeah, I know. Not alone, thank God. Yeah, it is kind of freeing. I don't know if you feel better having a conversation about it, but when it lives inside of your head and you feel like no one's going through what you're going through, it could just cause so much more imbalance and anxiety. So just so you know, those conversations can happen, especially here in a safe space. And I just wanted to say too, so much, yes, it's to have that financial wellness, to balance work with play is so important. But we've really found the value in making sure and checking in with our inner world. So that's our, spiritual practice. That is self-care, not in the way of checking things off the list, but just really checking in with self and seeing how we're doing. And automatically, that really gives me a sense of balance, because I think we fly through the day not knowing what the hell we're feeling, what we need. And so if you're able to, we just had an experience last week, and even just putting my hand on my heart and closing my eyes and just being like, how are you? What do you need? What's coming up right now is so much better than looking for the answer with someone or a book or a program or a YouTube video or an Instagram post or whatever it is. So always here, because you always know. So without further ado, we're so excited. Nicole Lapin has been a dear friend of ours for years now, and I'm just so grateful when really powerful, confident, real, honest women come into our lives and make such an impact and really support women and really support the empowerment of within the financial wellness space, within just taking care of yourself space. And she walks that talk. So without further ado, New York Times bestselling author Nicole Lapin. Look at you.
So cute.
It's a new look for me.
Loving it.
I don't know if I can pull this off.
Do we like it?
I love it.
Yes, we like it.
I love it.
What the
So
heck?
much.
We love
Yeah,
it.
I know you guys
I love it.
It's gonna be like rich change.
I love it, literally. I got my tits out, so what can I say?
I want a motorboat.
I know. That's what we came here
We're
to do.
just gonna get started.
People want to talk about how I make the money.
Girl, get it. Get that rich
Our
bitch
sixth
life.
stream of income. It's the newest one. We're so excited, and what I just love about your books in particular, but just in general, the way that you communicate with your audience is through storytelling and being so honest about where you've been, the highs and the lows, and so people are really able to relate. So I just really love to start with your story of burnout.
The only way I know how to tell a story is to tell it honestly. And I think with a lot of these taboo subjects, whether it's personal finance, figuring out your bank account, what's in there, balance, which I want to hear your guys' answers too, somebody has to go first. And I have always been of the philosophy that I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And somebody has to start because we're all feeling very similar things, just nobody wants to talk about it. And so when I set out to write Rich Bitch, I definitely thought that it would crush it or fail miserably. There was gonna be no gray area. Like, people were gonna have feelings about a book called Rich Bitch. Thankfully, it did the former. You know, I didn't think I would write more than one book. I didn't think I would be an author. And I found a niche in an area where people didn't talk about stories when it came to money. I was so confused. There's all these guidebooks, but nobody's telling me, like, how they went from the bottom, now they're here. And I was like, I've been in debt. Like, I want to tell you my salaries. I wrote my salaries, as you guys know, in my books because I'm telling women to talk about their salaries. So I literally got to put my money where my mouth is. And I was like, here's what I made at CNN, at CNBC. I didn't even ask. I think my lawyers were like, what? And I wrote what I made for my books because I was like, if I'm reading some book about some bitch talking about business, like, what did she even make for this book? So I was like, okay, I'm not even gonna ask legal either. I wrote what I made for my advances because I think somebody has to, again, go first, and especially when it comes to negotiating or getting ahead, we have to figure out where we're all at. It's like pricing your house without knowing the comp of the area. And I know it feels scary and weird and taboo, but like, we talk about everything before we talk about money. Like, I just talked about motorboating. Like,
No.
I would talk about bikini
know,
waxes and
it's true.
sexy time and all the things, and then we don't, like, I say to my girlfriends all the time, I'm like, at lunch or dinner, I'm like, what is in your bank account? What does your new baby daddy make? And it's crickets. I'm like, you just told me about your landing strip. Like,
Honestly.
what?
How many people like know their
What?
best friends like sex lives? Very intimately, yes. And how many people know how much their best friends make?
Right.
Yeah. It's like,
Ish.
that really hit home for me.
It's true. I think that this is the last taboo, and you know, now that I figured out that's the stuff that resonated from my first book, I was like, oh, whatever is the most embarrassing stuff, let me talk about that. At this point in my career, I've reached so many goals in my life. I wanted to be an anchor on CNN when I grew up, and I got there when I was 21, which is high-class problems, of course, to reach your dream job that early, but then I came up with new goals. And at this point, it's like just gravy. If I could be of service to other people using the platform I have and talking about really where I came from, then I'm winning. And so I was like, finance, fertility, I froze my eggs, I did it on Good Morning America, casually. And mental health is now the next one. And you know, the truth is, I went to so many events across the country promoting Rich Bitch and Boss Bitch, and the number one question I got was, how do you stay so balanced and on top of your shit all the time? I'm like, I might look put together on the outside, but I didn't feel that way at all. I had worked for 20 years. I started working when I was 15 years old, had a super broken home, first generation American, just needed to get a job and took whatever job I could. And when they offered me one in finance, and they asked me if I knew about finance, I lied. And I said yes. And I knew nothing. But I knew that I could figure it out. And I realized that money is a language like anything else. We just don't have a Rosetta Stone growing up, like you said. And you can bury your head in the sand and you can say, we didn't learn this stuff in school, or my family was fucked up and they didn't teach me about this. when they're immigrants, like mine was, and I just used cash, and they did shady stuff with money, and like I'm the least likely person to be a money expert. And I'm like, if I can do this, anyone can do this. And so when I opened up about that, I was like, okay, we got to talk about this. And then for becoming Superwoman, I had self-prescribed work for so many years. I had so much childhood trauma that I never dealt with. I didn't even know that PTSD was a diagnosis that people that didn't go to war could have. And I was searching for what was that? I went through series of depressions. I went through times of hyperactivity. And I couldn't, I went through different diagnoses that didn't make any sense to me. And when I landed on that, I could finally look that problem in the eye, see it for what it was. It took away some of its power. And then I turned what I thought was my biggest problem into a superpower. Because the truth is, I don't wish I didn't go through that trauma. I don't wish I didn't have that diagnosis. I don't wish I was different, because guess what? I wouldn't be able to be holding this mic and sitting with you badasses right now. And if that means that I could do that, then I have to consider it a superpower.
And when you start to get into shadow work and you really understand it, it is that shadow part of you, that part that you find the hardest to look at, that becomes your superpower. When you analyze it, when you integrate it into your life, and you make it, your mission. I would love to talk a little bit about, as women, a lot of us are women here. We have our men here who we love, but Supermen, but men versus women and our ability to speak to money. Are men talking about money, or is it just us that really finds it hard to have conversations, to be honest, to share with one another anything related to money?
I think it is. I went to this dinner with a bunch of power women in the financial world in New York. And it was a beautiful dinner at this super fancy place called Per Se, where there's 8,000 courses, and even if you love the person so much, you want to kill them at the end of the meal. And they were at the top of their field in different banks and other places. And the invitation said the Team of Rivals dinner. And it's a nod to the Lincoln cabinet, where he brought in people from different parties, as you guys know. But I just kept wondering, if the top dudes in finance had dinner, they would just call it dinner. Why are we rivaling about this? Why are we hiding from this? And I think that innately, we are more nervous to admit what we don't know. And we're more nervous to ask the question and look dumb or whatever. And I'm like, I'll take it for the team.
And I'd love to know, how did that, in your early years, not really looking at that and having shame around perhaps what you didn't know, that turning point in which you really took ownership of your mental health. I'd love to know what that looked like, because I know a lot of us kind of struggle with that. It's something that we can't quite put our finger on. So were there things that you would do every day, or what was keeping your mental health stable?
It wasn't for a long time, and I think a lot of women grow up thinking that a man is a financial plan. And I'll even go to events like this where there are moms in the room that's yeah, I get this female empowerment thing, this financial literacy thing, but I just want her to marry a rich dude. I'm like, what? This is still happening right now. A man is not a financial plan, period, end of story. I think when I had to deal with my mental health was the only time that I actually did. So 2.5 years ago, right after I was finished promoting Boss Bitch, I had a complete mental, emotional, and physical breakdown that stemmed from a severe burnout and an emergency hospitalization that made me rethink everything. I had to rethink how I was working. I had to rethink my priorities, because I realized that self-care is actually the biggest asset or liability, to use business words, in your career. You could network your ass off. You could do all the things. You could read Rich Bitch 50 times. You could email in the middle of the night. But if you're in the psych ward like I was, that was the biggest wake-up call on the planet. I remember being there at 3 o'clock in the morning and telling my shrink and my sister, I'm like, I have to cancel everything. I cannot believe where I am right now, and how did I get here? But everything got canceled. So that was more impactful to my career than any emails that I'd be sending in the middle of the night, all the networking events combined. And so it was a huge wake-up call to me. I mean, it was the best and worst place I've ever been in my life. It's the great equalizer. By the way, like, CEOs, homeless people, Broadway theater stars were there. And I remember thinking, like, right now, you know, I have to put my oxygen mask on first. And for so long, I thought that someone was gonna save me. Like, yes, I kind of gave lip service to the idea that, like, I complete me, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm gonna find a Superman, you know, and he's gonna save me, and he's gonna fix me. And that's just the way my life is gonna turn out. I'm gonna have a couple kids, and my life didn't turn out that way. I think my life turned out better, because when I needed a hero, I had to become one.
Wow, mic drop. That was beautiful. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, Justin, you gotta pick it up. And then he's like, well, what about you? I'm like, all right. All right, I got it. Touche. Touche. So that was the burnout period in your life. What were some tools and how did you figure out on your own to navigate finding balance again? And do you feel like balance is achieved or do you feel like it goes in and out?
So balance can be used as a noun and a verb, right? And a lot of times, especially as women, we say we find balance, like we find time. I'm like, if somebody could figure out how to find time, like, please let me know. It's like, we're finding balance under a chair. It's like this is a fucking game of hide and seek or something. I'm like, you can't find balance and be done. Balance should be used as a verb because it's something you constantly have to work on every single day. You know, my book was supposed to come out in March. So Rich Bitch came out 4 years ago in March. Boss Bitch came out 2 years after that in March. And in my brain, I'm like, wrap it up in a little bow. 2 years later in March, we're gonna have another book. Nobody knew that but me. Like, I thought that that was really organized. And right before I was about to send this to the printer, I felt like I was on the verge of relapse yet again. And I felt like a total imposter for the first time in years, because back in the day when I was starting in finance, like I felt like a total imposter. I was like, somebody's gonna find me out. I thought every single day that my badge wasn't gonna work at CNN. I was like, they're gonna figure out how young I am. Like, what? I'm not getting in the building. And, you know, I had to go back and read my own book. Like, do you guys remember this commercial? There was like a hair club for men or something. Yes. Where it was like, I'm not only the founder, but I'm also a customer or something ridiculous like that, right? And so I went back and I was reading this again, and I was like, damn, who wrote this? This is really good. And it looked like totally new to me at the time because I had fallen off balance so hard that I was on the verge of relapsing, felt like that imposter, and I needed to figure out how to pick myself back up again. I pushed the book out 6 months, and I read the book, and I realized that not only does it need to be a noun, but it can't be balance or chaos. I got into this thing where I was like, I found balance, we good? Like, I'm good. I got cocky. Like, I did all this stuff, and we can get into that. But then I was like, okay, well, I'll put that balance stuff on hold while I promote this book. I'll get back to the balance stuff. But not only is it a verb, but you have to be in balance and in chaos. They have to coexist. Problems are like a game of whack-a-mole. There's always gonna be another project. There's always gonna be another something. So it has to be balance and chaos.
And I think part of finding that balance is saying no. And I'd love to just explore, because we all have, I can imagine that a lot of your mental angst and maybe just forgetting how fucking amazing the book was a lot of chatter from other people or expectations, you know, put out there by whether it's publishers or agents or reviews from your last book, you know, from Rich Bitch being so successful and will this one be the same? Like, there's just so much going on. So how have you used the word no to your advantage? And also thinking about quote unquote toxic people who, you know, really aren't there for the greater good of you. And how do you let them go and like detox off that?
I quote in the book Superwoman, Shonda Rhimes, who says, no is a complete sentence. And it really worked on reframing the idea of saying no to other people is saying yes to yourself in a lot of cases. And I would just get into this habit that I thought, I'll be balanced, I'll be happy when I get there, right? And there was like a job, or a salary or a boyfriend or whatever, then I'll be happy. And then I got there. And I moved the goalpost on myself like immediately. And then it became another there. It was like, when I get my first book, I'll be happy. Then I got that. And it was like, okay, well, what about a second book? Then I'll be happy. And you never get your brain to the other side of balance or happiness. And studies have shown that we actually have this equation wrong, that we think success is going to make us happy. But actually, studies have shown that happiness makes us more successful. And when it comes to toxic people, I remember leaving the hospital. I started this outpatient program. I took this thing called dialectical behavioral therapy, which I highly recommend. I wish that was taught in school. I used to be on this kick, as you guys remember. Financial literacy has to be taught in school. Like, I'm going to the hill. I think that we learn the most ridiculous things. How to dissect a frog, how to do geometry, the Pythagorean theorem. Why do we need to know that ever, ever, ever? Why? Why don't we learn how to do a budget or taxes or business plan or write a check? And then I created the money school earlier this year, and that was sort of my solution, a little solution to creating a course around that. But I truly believe that the stuff I learned in that class, Selena Gomez is like a big fan of it, she's kind of popularized it, which is awesome, are the skills that are so simple. They're so simple, but they're not easy. They're how to set boundaries, how to be interpersonally effective, how to have emotional regulation when you're about to send this crazy email and like push the pause button. You never regret a workout and you never regret a pause in an email, but it's so hard to do. There was another section in mindfulness there. I didn't understand mindfulness. Like, I'd heard it before. I didn't understand meditation. I'm like, do I go to a place and I give them $40 and I'm silent? I have so many questions about why I'm doing this. I just didn't understand. Like, I had this crazy traumatic upbringing. The last thing we're thinking about, like when police are at my house every week, is mindfulness. And so it sounded, again, like another language to me, like Chinese. And then I could speak the language and forget the idea of thinking that I would then speak it to the world or teach other people how to do it. I am not an expert in the brain. I never claimed to be. I'm not an expert in money. I didn't work at a bank. I didn't get my MBA. My experience is my experience. I'm probably more an expert in self-hate than I am in self-love, and that's probably why I can at least have this platform to talk from how I got out of it a hard way. Same thing with debt. Same thing with, getting to a more balanced place. And I think with toxic people, I had to really write down a list of I broke it down by city. I travel a lot, as you know, and I said, here are the safe people when I was in a really good headspace. Here are the people that I can contact in LA. Here are the people I can contact in New York and Chicago and whatever. And, the rest of the people, it was hard to come to terms with the idea that you'd grown up with them, you'd had these shared experiences. And so studies show that you need 2 out of 3 of these things to have a meaningful relationship. So shared experience, which is like going to middle school together or whatever, common values, so having the same hobbies, liking dance class, whatever, and also equality in a relationship. So somebody is not a mooch. You need 2 out of those 3 things to have even the basis for a healthy relationship. But the ones that had just one, where they were either a mooch or I went to middle school with them, so I felt like an obligation, they had to go. I had to kick them to the curb. And if people don't make you feel fan-fucking-tastic, then you gotta kick them to the curb. Otherwise, they're taking your time, which is your most valuable asset. And I also don't care if that's family. There are tons of people, this is another thing that people don't talk about, is being estranged from family. Even in the dating world, people are like, I just want somebody with a good family. I'm like, well, I guess I don't fit that bill. And for a long time, I tried to whitewash this story, and I tried to hide it. And then I was tired. I was just done hiding it. And, I realized that we're all dealing with something. You just have to figure out what your something is. All my books, as you know, are 12-step plans, and the first step is truly admitting you have a problem. I mean, I have more issues than Vogue, so. Who's dealt with burnout? Or thinking about burnout, or on the verge of burnout, or had a breakdown? I mean, I did the largest study ever done for the research of this book on women in burnout. I found that we're nearing burnout in the 80 and 90% levels. That is bananas. The craziest stat of my study was that only about half of us think that there's a problem. We think that the pace of our lives is sustainable, like it's all good, like we're just gonna keep going, but we're on the verge of burnout and we're on the verge of breakdown all the time. Something's got to give. Swimming and not drowning is not the same thing. We are not drowning, but we are not swimming.
Yeah, I related to a lot of what you said too, and I was just thinking about the shame thing around my family, and I do remember dating people and being like, feeling shame that my family wasn't perfect, you know, that I didn't have like an attractive family that, you know, if they joined us, we would have fun together and we would like get drunk at vacations and stuff, but I completely I was like, God, I wish my parents got drunk together. Whatever. That's Ohio. That's what you do in Ohio when you have like a good family.
No, but people also thought like daddy must have made a call when I got my jobs really early on. They were like, oh, this must be like a little rich girl, like her daddy must have made a call. I remember hearing that all the time and I was so embarrassed to be like, no, my daddy died of a drug overdose. Like, surprise, no, nobody made a call for me. Like, I just worked my way up the hard way in like small markets. I didn't have any connections or anything whatsoever. And I think that shame, like there's a lot of pain, right? To having whatever, you know, fucked up situation you had. And then on top of that, you add the shame. Like we have to get rid of that distress part on top of the stress already. And it's the way we talk to ourselves. Like we're so mean to ourselves. So mean to ourselves. I would say like, you suck, you're the worst. You know, I would shame myself for stuff with my family and, you know, the sins of the father are not bestowed on the son or the daughter. And I just never really came to terms with that. And lately I've been trying to quiet the mean girl inside my head, as you guys talk about a lot. And it's a constant battle. And I tell my girlfriends who talk shit about themselves, they'll be like, I look bad in this, I look bad, I'm the worst, I suck, I lost this thing, I'm gonna never work again. And I say, stop talking about my friend like that. If somebody else said that stuff about you, I would punch them in the face or gouge their eyes out. You're not allowed to talk about you like that, you are my friend.
Yeah, I think that's something you can do for one another. You know, and whenever sometimes I'm looking for advice or I'm seeking external advice, I think, what would I tell my best friend? And you guys, like everyone has the advice that you need to hear. It's just really thinking about yourself in that third person enough to give yourself that advice that you deserve. One of the things that we think about with burnout, or I think leads for me to feel burnt out quite often, is social media. You know, it's endless. You could scroll forever. You could comment forever, you could post forever. It just never really ends, and that's what it's intended to do. I'd love to talk about, in your book, you talk a lot about ditching the phone, how that has impacted you, what are some practices that you put in place to help with that?
So I have a whole digital detox plan in here, and I think it's as similar as dieting, right? Like you might go on some boot camp thing, and then you create a sustainable eating plan, and we talk about this around finances too, and how to create a spending plan that allows you to buy your latte so you don't end up binging on a Gucci purse or a pair of Louboutins or whatever later on. Because so many women will come to me and they'll be like, I did so good in the beginning of the year, I cut out the latte, you would be so proud of me. Come May, come June. Well, I didn't buy the latte, so I bought that Chanel purse because I was so good and I just needed a treat. And I'm like, if you buy yourself a little treat every single day, you would stay on track. So it's the equivalent of a little Hershey's Kiss so you don't end up noshing on a big old hunk of chocolate cake in the middle of the night. We've all been there. And so when it comes to technology, I think of it in the same way. Like, get this boot camp out of your way. I went on a total digital detox. Even as I was, you know, preparing for the launch of this book, and I felt like I was on the verge of relapsing, and I read my own book because I'm a lifelong reader of it for sure, in addition to being the writer of it. You know, I had to remind myself of some of those things. I had to remind myself that it's all about progress and not perfection. And you know what? There is no external solution to an internal problem. And I think it's a constant reminder. And you know, I think sometimes the biggest enemy is between your ears.
Yeah, and I think when we have our phones, it kind of keeps us on a very surface level. We're unable to do the deep work, whether it's at work or with our friends or with ourselves. And so for me, like that surface level existence is super anxiety, you know, inducing. To not be able to ground yourself deeply in a moment because you have this screen that you're looking at for validation.
Totally. And when I got rid of all the apps on my phone, like I safeguarded myself from myself. I only could log on a browser. You know, I'm lucky enough to have a team that helps me do that. It's obviously so much part of the business. And, you know, I really had to figure out how to have old school tricks. Like our phone has replaced everything for us. A calculator, who has a calculator? Who has, cool.
T89, what was it called? TI? Yeah.
Oh yeah, those crazy graphic calculators. Like a camera, right? It's replaced an alarm clock. So I bought an alarm clock. I got an old school alarm clock. And because I travel, I bought like an iPod that doesn't have phone capability to wake up that way. And when I got off it, I had chronic hives for a few months actually, and I was so stressed out. And I went on a 4-day detox where I told my team, I'm like, I know this is probably not the best time, but it's also the best time. And my hives, they didn't 100% go away, but they went away 90%. I'd seen all these doctors, like all these allergy specialists, and been on like 5 Benadryls, no, not Benadryl, because that would be bad news bears, like Allegras every day. Nothing fixed it. And when I got off of it, I realized, you know, the old adage is that comparison is the thief of joy. And I would compare myself all the time. And I know we talk about this a lot on social media, comparing ourselves, but when it comes to balance, I think where we're doing ourselves the most disservice is comparing ourselves to the best version of every aspect of our lives. So in our careers, we compare ourselves to this CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. In our fitness regime, we compare ourselves to a fitness blogger who works out 5 hours a day. If we're moms, we compare ourselves to some mom who homeschools her kids and bakes bread. It's so unrealistic. Those women don't have the same set of circumstances that you do. And balance, by the way, looks different for everyone. I created this sort of Weight Watchers type system where you give yourself points for balance because I was gonna just scream if I heard work-life balance one more time. You know, super women, boss bitches have more than 2 things that we're balancing. This Lady Justice idea of 2 bowls that are equally balanced is ridiculous. It's not realistic. You know, we have a burgeoning romance, we have a side hustle, we have our emotional wellness that we have to put in there. What does that get? 17%? 37.5%? It's ridiculous. And so I said, take 10 points for a day, figure out the things that matter to you most, give yourself points for that day. The only requirement is that you have to put at least 1 point in emotional wellness, otherwise it will require, say that 10 times fast, all of the points, like it did for me if you neglect it for too long. And you know what? Forgive yourself for the stuff you're not focusing on. Like, if you look at a girl in her office working, 15 hours a day, you think, oh, she's not balanced, because we've been told that that's not what balance looks like. Balance looks like sleeping more and whatever. Maybe that's balance for her. Maybe next week or next year, she's, working way less and starts a family or whatever. So I think it changes all the time. I even say to Ariana Huffington, who's amazing Superwoman, and she talks about sleep too, and I sort of clap back and I say, listen, sister, if you slept, you wouldn't be Ariana. If I had balance in my 20s, I wouldn't have this platform that I have right now. I wouldn't have a step and repeat or a thing where you can put your face in my face.
That's the goal we're all working towards, right?
So I think it looks different at different times. I would be in her. I want a cut out of you, sister, in that dress.
Yeah, totally.
But I think back to
I don't even know what to say to that, so.
When we were starting the podcast, there was little to no balance, but it was required in order to be where we are today. We had no idea that this is where we would be, but there is like this knowing that, us showing up 7 days a week, maybe neglecting some friendships and relationships a little bit, and just going all in did feel like balance to us. And now we're in a space where we're trying to really find what maybe is conventional balance, where we are taking time off, where we are really putting a lot of effort into our relationships and into our own self-work. But I do agree, it's gonna look different for everyone, and that's like when I just tune in, I'm like, how does this feel? Okay, this feels good that I'm working on the weekend, you know what I mean? And if people judge me and say, oh, why aren't you coming out? Like, I can just be really confident in the fact that I'm taking care of myself and what I want to do.
Yeah,
100%.
I mean, I'm sorry. Y'all know I live in duality, so I always think about balance as, you know, the time when we started the podcast as me being divinely led to do something that was meant for me. But then there is the other side of it where there was part of it where I realized that I was working so hard. I was doing the full-time job with almost 30 for 7 days a week at nights at work, doing all that stuff because I had this innate insecurity that I wasn't enough. You know, so there is such a delicate line, as there is with everything in our life, in realizing, is this something that I am divinely led to do, so this energy is driving me towards this thing that is my sole purpose? Or is this something that I'm doing because I feel like I'm not enough if I don't just have a job? You know, if I wasn't, okay, everyone has a side hustle, I need a side hustle, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that. I'm not enough if I'm just doing this one thing. So I think that's the part where checking in daily is so key, and understanding trauma in your life or things that are patterns that would lead you to do something that would cause you to have burnout. So I would just advise you for that too.
It's true, and I think it's the idea that we've been told women have it all. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, hello, think about that for 1 second. All right, let's just say we have a cake. What kind is it?
Keto cake I got for Lindsay's birthday last night.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not
good.
even keto. It was so good.
Like sugar-free, dairy-free,
It was so
soy-free,
good.
Who knows what was in
nut-free. So then we eat the cake. We eat the keto cake. There's nothing weird about that, right? But you actually can't eat your cake and then have it. That's actually what's not true. But we don't even stop to think about these things that we tell ourselves, or these analogies, or like, don't buy a latte because that's what financial gospel says. Well, like, I'm here to tell you, you can buy a latte and you can rent a house and the financial gods will not kill you. And the same way, like, you can have your cake and eat it too, and you can have it all, but only if you decide what having it all means. You have to define that part. Otherwise, you keep changing the goalpost on yourself, you keep comparing yourself to social media, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm not balanced, and you don't even know what balance is. You have to define that. It's like when, you know, somebody will say, I'm off budget. Like, did you even have a budget? Where's the benchmark? Where are we comparing ourselves to? And so I think you can't do it all. You can't, especially not at the same time. You can't have it all. But you have to define what that looks like, and if you write the rules, you're destined to win.
Beautiful. We would love to open this up for Q&A. Oh, there she is.
Oh, yes.
So any questions on burnout, balance, finance, anything? Nicole's an open book. We're here too, but Nicole's an open book. Got you, girl.
I've never read any of her books, and I'm going to read them
Yet.
all tonight.
It's a long night. Get some sleep.
But what happened? What's the mental breakdown? I'm
What do you mean,
dying.
what
to know,
happened?
like, how did you end up in the hospital?
So I say in the book that, you know, you may point to a book tour and be like, girl, are you okay? You're on another book tour. We're gonna have to worry about you. And it wasn't the book tour. It was a crazy ass book tour. I mean, I was on all the places. I was in Times Square, like on billboards. I think I say that it wasn't a spontaneous combustion, but a lifetime of smoldering embers that finally caught fire and incinerated everything in their path.
Wow, let's just take a second.
She writes books.
I mean, we don't have separation anxiety. We don't go. Should I walk speechless?
In case this side. Yeah.
Was
Yeah,
that
so
in the
I think it,
hospital?
yeah, so it was a combination, and it became suicidal, and I was taken on the street corner after texting my shrink, you know, some scary things. They have to do that.
Wait,
And
what
I,
happened? I'm gonna read the book, but can you tell me, like, because this is a big part of your story that I don't know it, so I just feel like it's so important.
Totally. And I don't bury the lead, and I was thinking for a while, in all my books, as you'll read tonight, they have confessions of. So there's confessions of a rich bitch, confessions of a boss bitch, and these are these like stories that I put in. And so in early drafts of the book, I had this story as a confession in the first chapter. And I was like, you know what? My reader is too smart for this. She wants to know why I wrote this book. So it starts, all you have to do, sister, is read the first few pages, not just one page. It's a longer
First
story
50
than that.
pages, as Gail King said.
Yeah, it's like 10 pages. But yeah, that was the combination of just a lifetime of self-prescribing work
That's
to
my
myself.
biggest fear. That's why I'm like, that happened to you. I
Yeah, you
even
can't
believe
hide.
it.
So I've learned a lot about trauma, and I do trauma therapy, I do EMDR, I put a lot of these resources in the back. I've tried all of these things. I have a free ebook that tells you about, the Cliff Notes version, so you don't have to spend all the money that I did. But, having trauma therapy, by the way, it's never a good day to get a colonoscopy, and it's never a good day to have trauma therapy. But I do it. I'm actually making time in this crazy-ass book tour tomorrow to go here in Santa Monica to go to trauma therapy. Not a colonoscopy? No.
We're all doing that later, actually.
A colonic is a different story. That's lovely. But a colonoscopy, no, I'd be running to the bathroom right now. I think that it really will kick your ass. Like, I thought I'm never going to be that woman who burned out and yes.
I just want to
So many
say
things.
thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
saying that, because no one tells the truth, and it's all happy, and it's like, I'm 44, hi, you see my wrinkles, and I came
Don't
here
talk about my new friend like
to
that.
see the girls tonight because I wanted to see you, and you caught my eye, so here I am.
Hi.
But it is game changing when you, the perfect person, can get up and say, I was in a mental institution or a hospital. I wouldn't say institution, but whatever.
It was
you call it.
NYU, yeah. And what it reminded me is that you go to a hospital because you're suffering
Yeah,
from something. I was on a floor with other people that were suffering.
yeah.
And there were other people on different floors that had cancer and other things, and they were suffering, and you go to the hospital to get better, and that's what I did. And when I walked out, I left, I was by myself, and I didn't want to see anybody anyway. I talk about this, I don't think it might be on page 8 or something, so you'll get there. And I cut off my hospital band, where it says your name and all of that stuff, when I got home with this great sigh of relief. And I walked a few miles in New York. I could have walked forever. It was the first time that I walked somewhere without having my phone. And I remember looking at other people for the first time without running through emails or Instagram or going through my to-do list in my head. And I was like, I wonder if they have ever been there too. I never
they
thought about
have,
it.
honey. They have.
And it's true. And and I cut off the band, and I knew that from then on was going to be largely a solo journey, so I had to get down with it on day one. I also put a ring on it, literally on my right hand. I can tell that story if you'd like. But underneath that band was a yellow band. And on my desk right now, in my office, it is framed, and it says fall risk on it. And in a hospital, especially when you're not in those big bulky beds, you are a fall risk. You're walking around on medication. Yeah. Here I am. And you're walking around on medication, and you are at a risk of physically falling. But that idea of being a fall risk has had so much more meaning to me since then, because I realized that without the right care and attention, I could fall again. I could. But the difference now is that I actually have the skills in knowing how to get back up, and I didn't then. And I am never going to claim that I am an expert in balance. I think anyone who tells you they are, you should run the other way.
No, exactly.
Nobody is. But what I am an expert is in regaining that balance when it will inevitably slip.
And you all are going to run the world, because if I had this at your age, I would have been president.
There's still time, Mama.
Holy friggin' heck. Are you guys excited about the book? Can that be a movie? Wow.
Yes?
Yeah, honey.
Hi. Thank you so much. I think you kind of touched on this, and maybe you do in your book, which I'm excited to read. But finding balance at different stages in your life. I'm in my 20s, and this is kind of time to work and grind. But how do you tips for finding the seasons of life of okay, when do I focus on career versus family, and how do you kind of actually take those actionable steps to make it work for you?
So I was on a panel, I hosted a panel yesterday with these amazing female founders of Sugarfina, Equinox, Paige, and Paige Shannon. You may have her on your butt right now. She's awesome. And they all said something super controversial but interesting and true. And Rosie O'Neill, who started Sugarfina, said, you know what, for a long time, when people asked me what I valued the most, I was supposed to say my family. I was supposed to say God. I was supposed to say all of these things. But really what I valued most was building a badass business. And I didn't want to apologize for that. And Lavinia, who's a dear friend of mine who started Equinox and who lives out here, she has an amazing son. And she said that while I was birthing Equinox, I felt so much pressure to say that my son was the most important thing. But really what I wanted was to build an empire, and I didn't want to apologize for it. And so I think when you're doing that, really think of the things you value. And I did a social experiment this weekend, actually in LA, where I had a casting and a bunch of women came in, and you'll hear the preview of it, it's not out yet. I had all of them hold a whiteboard, a little personal one, and I said, list the top 5 things you value most. And they wrote, and then they turned it over, and it's like, my job, my house, my dog, food. We want to be givers, and we want to be of service, and we want to be able to say yes, or we think, which I do still, that I'm never going to have another opportunity, I'm never going to have another speech opportunity, I'm never going to have another deal, I'm going to die alone, broke, homeless, and with cats, but I just need cats first. Like, I still have this narrative in my head. I have to remind myself that, you know, I'm okay, and I think that's what drove me a lot of the way, was not having a fallback plan and not having a plan B. And so I just constantly have to remind myself of that and to put myself at the top of the priority list, because if I'm not of service to myself, I can't be of service to anyone else. And if I say yes to something that I feel an obligation for, and I put my half-ass into it, that's actually not helping the other person who's asking you to do something. Superwomen put their full ass in everything, not their half-ass in a lot of different things. That's math.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is also Nicole. And
That's
I know, right? And well, first I wanted to make a comment and then a question. Well, first of all, I noticed a few times you mentioned, like, I'm not an expert at this, but you know, this is what I'm really into, and that's something that I always lead with as well. Like, I also like to think of myself as someone who talks about a lot of things that I think is really important. And I can also relate, you know, to the fact that you talk about a lot of things that no one else is really talking about. And first of all, I wanted to make a comment and share that even though you're not an expert, that's okay, because no one else is talking about it. And the fact that you're talking about it already puts you like one level above 99% of the world. Or 99.9% of the world.
Thanks.
Yeah, because that's like something that I think is like a really big deal. And then also, I wanted to ask you, because I noticed you're very, sorry, I hate public speaking.
You're great at it though.
Thanks. I noticed you're able to talk about a lot of really bold and like taboo topics. And me personally, I come from like a little different from your background, but also a home that's like very traditional. You don't talk about a lot of things. Not only do we not talk about finances, we don't talk about sex, we don't talk about, you know, emotions and feelings. By the way, my background is like a psychotherapist, so I totally flipped on that. And I was always someone who was like very outspoken, really wanted to go against that, but I never knew why. And I don't know, like, I see that you are doing this a lot, and I really support it, and I think it's awesome. And I'm curious if you know why, you know, have this inside of you.
So the first part of the question, I think a lot of people claim to be experts, and yes, I never claimed to be that. And I always thought I knew a lot about this subject. I'm learning every single day, and even when it comes to finances, I mean, I've been in Wall Street and I've talked to old rich white dudes for years and years and years about how to get richer. So I know a lot, but I still don't know everything. And I think that's where the issue is rethinking conventional wisdom. And so that bridges to the second part of your question, where I tried to rethink conventional financial wisdom to start. I was on CNBC. You know, I was talking to the 40,000 richest, most powerful men in the country. That's not editorialization, that's the Nielsen numbers. And I was hearing these experts who claim to be experts say, don't buy a latte, buy a house, invest in a 401k, to an entrepreneurial generation who might not have a 401k, might not even, might think it's an STD, or, doesn't know the difference between an IRA or a SEP or simple or whatever, all these other fancy retirement options. Maybe they're starting a company and they don't have a retirement plan. Do you guys have a retirement plan in your company yet?
I have from my old company.
Like a solo 401k?
Got like $1 zillion in it. Yeah, we do, Nicole. This isn't about us, though.
There's different options, right? Like for these ladies, there might be a SEP or a simple that they could sign up for, which is an IRA, which is an individual retirement account that you can take anywhere you go, but there's special ones when you start businesses and different companies and stuff like that. And so I was like, wait a minute. Maybe this generation is not in a cubicle. Maybe they don't have a 401k. Maybe they don't even have a boss. Maybe they're the boss. Who's talking to that group of people? And I was like, there is this huge void. There is this huge white space in this world of expertdom, and saying okay, let's rethink this for a second. So at the end of every chapter that you'll find tonight, yep, I rethink conventional wisdom. And I do a bottom line, which is a finance term. I actually rewrote an entire financial dictionary in Rich Bitch, in real English. Because I felt like when I was learning this language, I felt like I needed a dictionary for the definition. There's this site called Investopedia that I would be on all the time. And I'm like, okay, shorting a stock, what the fuck does that even mean? And then I find a definition for the definition. I'm like, I still don't understand. I was a valedictorian of Northwestern and my high school, and I say that only to tell you that I had no idea what that definition was. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And when I learned the language, I realized it's actually not that complicated. Short is the opposite of, not the opposite of tall, it's the opposite of long, and it just means something's going in the pooper that's a stock. And that's it, you're betting against it. That's all it is. It's not some secret special language. We can all understand this conceptually, but I think it's the language that keeps us out of it. So I saw this white space in the market, this void. And I was like, I burned my corporate bra really quickly. You'll hear that story too in Boss Bitch. And why I did it, so hastily, and all the ways that I fucked up along the way, and the ways that I wish I would have prepared better. But I saw this void, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go after it, or I'm gonna die trying. And I knew that somebody had to rethink convention. And just stop for 1 second, or don't even listen to me. I don't care. Don't buy a latte, buy a house. Do you? Do whatever you want, just as long as you're thinking for yourself. It's like when I became vegan, when I was in my teens. I was vegetarian, I think I was 11 or 12, and my family's Middle Eastern, and I ate lamb, and
Middle Eastern.
Sister from another mister. And, do you eat meat, or you're that same religion because your parents are, right? And then there's a certain point where you're like, wait a minute, do I want to be Jewish? Do I want to eat lamb? And you think for yourself. And I don't know, maybe the answer could have been, yes, I want to eat lamb. And that would be okay, because I took that moment to really think about it. But the answer was no, and so I stopped eating meat. And so I think there's that moment for so many other areas of your life. There's that moment for your financial life, where you're rethinking conventional wisdom. There's that moment for your business life, where you're like, maybe I do want to do this side hustle, or maybe I got this side hustle out of my system and I fucking hate it, so I'm going back to my job, or whatever it is. Rethinking what you're supposed to do and thinking for yourself, even if that becomes the conventional wisdom, but just having that moment and rethinking it. I don't know where it comes from. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not gonna make something up. No one's ever asked me that question. I'll think about it, I'll get back to you. Find me on the gram.
Hi, this is a bit less of a glamorous question, but just personally, financially, I have a lot of different jobs, and right now I definitely know that in a few years I will burn out and reach a point where I can't do what I'm doing anymore. So I didn't know if you had any tips, techniques, apps, something that you can maybe start weekly to look at your money, look at your accounts and see, I don't really know a number wise of where you want to go and how you can work towards that.
So you want tools to not burn out because you just told me you're gonna burn out in a few years?
I'm
Or
just
you want budgeting stuff
Kind
for
of
everything.
budgeting.
You want all the
Budgeting, but
things.
I'm like
You want
thinking about
me to
switching.
make over your life. I got it.
No, like I'm talking, you know, those like budgeting apps and all that stuff. Like, is there anything that you recommend that you think works really well?
I don't. I don't. You know, if somebody wants to pay me to say that I do, that's a whole other
Your
situation.
bucks.
No, I do. I think there are a lot of great apps out there. You know, I don't love one in particular. I think it's really like whatever works for you, or it's literally writing on a piece of construction paper with a pink colored pencil if that's gonna make you do it. Like, I think a lot of people sign up for apps and they're like, I'm gonna do this all the time, and then they forget about it. It's like supplements. Like, I have 1,000 supplements, and I'm like, you know what, this fish oil, like, I'm gonna take it every day until I die. And it's like, I have so many bottles of fish oil in my cabinet. And so whatever is actually you're gonna stick to. So whether it's like writing it down on a piece of paper, or opening up an Excel thing, or getting Elvest, or, you know, or getting Acorns, or getting, you know, a ton of these different apps that are out there, or Betterment, or, you know, whether you're thinking of investing, or you're thinking of budgeting and you want to get Mint or something like that. Like, explore a little bit. You know, we spend so much time, hours and hours, exploring, you know, Instagram, or like how to research a vacation, or the dress that we're gonna wear to the party. And you know how little time we spend on our retirement and looking at options for that, or how little time we spend on budgeting apps. So just don't even take the whole time that you would spend on figuring out how to find the perfect dress for the party. Like, take half of that time and look at some of the apps out there. And if you just are really honest with yourself and you're like, I'm not into this app thing, I want to do it old school, then do it old school. And so in Rich Bitch, I break down, you guys know, the 3 E's. I love alliteration. I put that on my dating app, actually, that I love: swearing, sarcasm, sunshine, and alliteration. It's true. I have the 3 E's: essentials, endgame, and extras. So 70% of your overall budget goes to the essentials, 15% to the extras, which is like the latte, the mani-pedi, and 15% to the endgame, so your future self, the girl who's gonna need some money when she has her burnout that she's talking about, which is another issue that there's a book you can read about that. And obviously apps around that. Like, if you're down with Headspace and all of these other apps, like, go to town. They're not for me, personally. I think of meditation as like doing random classes. So I like taking latte art making, or tomahawk throwing, or archery, or really weird shit, or improv class. And I find that to be a meditative thing. Is that okay, ladies? It's not, yeah. So it's like, you know, I don't know, I rethought that too. And so that does it for me. So I think as far as the burnout thing, if there's one thing you can do, and you ladies talk about this all the time, is like that gratitude journal and having that morning and evening routine. I can feel all over the place for the rest of the day, and my schedule's always different every single day. But if I can have that morning and evening routine and be off my phone for like the first hour, which is lately is not the case, then, you know, I feel the difference when I don't do a gratitude journal. I totally feel it. And it's like my time for myself, where I'm also creating my own intention and my own path for the day. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you check emails, and you're on Instagram, and you're on your like ex-boyfriend's cousin's dog's page, or whatever you get into, and then you check emails again, and you check texts, and that's what happens. And then you get into somebody else's agenda, and somebody else is hijacking your entire day. And all of a sudden, their agenda is your to-do list. And so you're just like putting out fires, and like, you know, because being a business person is firefighting a lot of the time. And instead, if you take that time, you take that hour, and you do your gratitude journal, you do whatever you need to do in the morning, and then you figure out what you really need to accomplish during the day, then get to email. And I think what we end up doing is we also think that procrastination is a bad thing. Procrastination is not a bad thing. Like, let's bring sexy back to procrastination. Because if it's not moving you towards your goals, you should thoughtfully procrastinate that. And so in this journal that I come out with, the Superwoman journal, that's actually out next month, is where I talk about the point system, and also basically connecting the dots between like your to-do list, because it feels really cathartic to cross everything off, right? You're just like indiscriminately cross it off. Like, oh, I don't know, I can do the dry clean pickup. Like, let's just cross it off. But maybe that's not gonna actually move you towards your goals, so you should procrastinate that, and that's okay. And by the way, stress is another one that I've rethought. Is like, stress, you guys know, is not all bad. There's actually a word called eustress, which is EU stress, like euphoria, which is good stress. And then there's bad stress, which is distress. So like you wouldn't want an athlete on the field, you know, not having stress. You wouldn't want Tom Brady or whoever. I'm terrible at this game. Like not having stress, right? So unless you're not a Pats fan, in which case you might not want him to have stress. But like there is a good amount of stress, and there's actually the same physiological feeling that you have being excited and being nervous. Like your palms start sweating, you know, you have like sort of a heartbeat that goes faster, and it's just how you reframe each of those different things. So maybe you're not gonna have burnout in the next couple of years. Maybe you're gonna have balance.
We got you.
And the 3 E's is really helpful.
And with this book, so in the past 2 books, I do the 3 F's of goal setting. So in family, finance, and fun. And basically like reverse engineering to how to get the money to live the life you want, not the other way around. Because people in you know, events like this will be like, I just want $1 million, that's my goal. I'm like, bitch, what are you gonna do with that $1 million? I don't know, maybe you need less than $1 million, maybe you need more than $1 million. It's first about figuring out the life you want and then reverse engineering to figure out how to get the money to live the life you want and not the other way around. However, in this book, I say mea culpa. Like, I'm sorry, which by the way, I'm on another kick. We're gonna talk about this later because you said I'm sorry and you didn't say thank you when I complimented you. And so we're gonna work on that.
You're right.
Like, cause I think I'm on this big kick of saying sorry. Like, we're putting ourselves down in a place of weakness by saying sorry. Count how many times you say sorry during the day. I did that and it was like 50, and you become much more conscious of it. And then when somebody gives you a compliment, you're like, ugh, I'm the worst, my hair sucks, it's a dry shampoo, it's so bad. Just say thank you. I mean, we put ourselves down so much. So for this one, I will say I'm sorry, because I did do something not awesome by not including the last F word, which I include in this book. It's not that one, but I fully endorse that one too. It's fitness, which is physical and emotional fitness. If you ignore that, you know, it's gonna take over like it did for me.
Hi, I was wondering how you incorporate all this attitude of like independence and empowerment into your dating life.
So
Sorry.
interesting. So I started a podcast that just launched a few weeks ago on iHeart with the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur magazine, Jason Pfeiffer. It's called Hush Money, and talks about taboo subjects in money. And one of our first episodes was who pays on a date. So we debate this topic, and then we bring on a celebrity judge to decide who's right. And so at first, when we had our meeting with our producer, we're like, okay, so here's the topic of who pays on a first date. Nicole's gonna say, you know, split it, she's a feminist, you know, the woman's got this, she makes her own money, she's a rich bitch. And Jason's gonna say that he's so chivalrous and he's gonna ride in on a white horse and just sweep her off her feet. I'm like, no, a man is gonna pay on a first date, like, not even a question about it, not even a question. And I can pay for anything. We go to dinner, we can order the most expensive tofu or one glass of wine that I have. I'm a pretty inexpensive date. Let's say I'm sitting with a dude and he gets shot, or he leaves, or something crazy happens and I'm left with the check. I can pay for it. My credit card will go through, I can totally pay for it. I don't want to pay for it, and I think that's the difference. It's wanting and needing. And so I still feel very much like I have that feminine energy in a home. I want to take care of a home. Like, I want to be a boss bitch in the boardroom and not in the bedroom. Like, I make 1,000 decisions during the day. I manage a team. I have a lot of that masculine energy. But in the end of the day, I want to be a woman and I want a dude to pay for it. And I want to do the fake reach.
You will or you won't? What did you say? You will?
The fake reach. I will on the first date, but never after the first date.
Okay.
So I'll do the fake reach, and my line is normally like,
I don't.
can I contribute to this? Y'all can use that. But I don't want to. And we had the host of Sex with Emily on the show, who I didn't know, who's adorable, and she agreed with me. and she's a super boss too. And she's like, if a guy takes me up on that fake reach, like I'm done. Ladywood is down. I'm in bed, date is over. Like I'm so turned off, I don't want that. But it's about being really, really clear, not what you think you should say, but what you actually feel. And that's what I feel. And by the way, you do whatever you want to do. Like you want to split it, you want to go Dutch, you want to pay for it, you want to be the masculine energy, go to town. I don't care. You do you. I think being an ultimate feminist is not telling other women what to do, but letting you do you. Like, I remember for Rich Bitch, I had criticism a little bit, not much. I wanted more because I really wanted that. I thought I would get more for Rich Bitch, but one network morning show called me and was like, I don't think we want to use the title of the book. And I tried to explain to them, I was like, we're using this in an empowering way. I'm taking back the word bitch and owning it as a badge of honor. I've been called a bitch in a derogatory way, but there's nothing wrong with being strong and powerful and blah, 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 all the things. And I was like, the ends justify the means. If we can get a woman to pick up a money book who never imagined she picked up a money book otherwise, then we're winning. They're like, cool, but we don't like the title, and we're all women. And, you know, we just think it's not right. And I was like, you know what? Cool. That's your opinion. You do you. And I think ultimately, whether it comes to dating, whether it comes to that, it's about you making your own decision for yourself. For me, I don't want to pay on a date, ever. I don't. Do you? Who wants to pay on a date?
But if you do, you do you.
But if you do, but like, also, you know, it's going back to the things you value. So in the book, I talk about like, you can value whatever you want to value. You know, for me, I value career and friends who are my chosen family. You know, if you value fame and power and money, like, don't think you have to write charity and all this other shit on there. If that's what you really value, if that's what you want from relationships, if you want to climb the social ladder, nobody has to see that. Just be really honest with yourself. Whatever it is.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Jacqueline. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for prioritizing and being really honest about like mental and emotional wellness, and especially like the fact that you have like a super cool career and like still did that. That's really awesome. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
My question is, okay, I received it. Okay, so my question is, I get nervous. So
Or you get
You're
excited.
doing great.
okay, I'm excited. Okay, so my question is like, when you have kind of let go or decided to love toxic people at a distance, how do you manage like that awkward feeling of now like being like the I don't know what you call it, but I just feel awkward. So I'm like, what do you do with that? How do you work through that?
Like how awkward? Like if you ghost somebody and they're like, what up?
Not ghosts, but like you're like, okay, you know, you already had like the Beyonce thing, you did bad by yourself, you know, you got past that and you're like, all right, what do I do now? Like, I'm by myself, but I want to play like Nintendo games with someone. Like, but you need like a 2-player stick, and so I just feel like, oh, okay.
Who else likes Nintendo? Anyone want to play with Jacqueline? A new friend. So I think with toxic friendships, and I talk about like a 3-step process in the book, where you have to be honest. Like you can't lie and say, I have a thing. Like that's just not cool. Like you can be kind, but also harsh. I think there's a difference between being nice and being kind. You can always be kind, even if you're saying something that somebody doesn't want to hear. And so I think when it comes to relationships that you feel like are toxic and you really want to draw a hard line, which by the way, we don't draw hard boundaries. Countries have boundaries. States have really clear boundaries. Do you think it'd be cool if somebody just like came over here for a little bit? No. Like you have to be really clear about where your line is. Like for me, I have hard boundaries about people talking shit about mental health. I have hard boundaries. It can be whatever you want, but that is your boundary. And you know, when somebody says like you've crossed the line, like colloquially we hear that, where exactly is your line? And if the line like leaves the other person out, you can be really honest and respect yourself and say like, listen, I'm just, you know, I'm really focusing on myself right now. I don't have the bandwidth, or I'm focusing on whatever you are focusing on. You can be honest, and you don't have to necessarily ghost, which is not also cool. Nobody likes a ghoster, and you can just be straight up about it.
Yeah, I think something that we've seen within our community is when you are going through this period where you're leveling up and you're vibration is raising and you're reprioritizing yourself and you're changing and you're evolving, there can be a time when it's a little dark and you feel alone and you feel like you've lost friends and you feel like maybe it's you. You know, I've definitely gone through those periods of time in my life where I've changed and I've evolved, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's me, you know? It's always them. Just kidding. It's always me, but in a good way. I'm getting to know myself, I'm reprioritizing myself, I'm changing, and I like it. You know, and that's okay. So if it's a little dark for a while, that's normal. The universe is catching up to you, and things will change.
Yeah, you know, Rumi says, the poet that I quote in the book is, it's where the light enters you. The wound is where the light enters you. And I think that sometimes we have to put down the magnifying glass and pick up the mirror. Not necessarily because you did something wrong, but because you are changing. And people at different times in your life, you know, maybe made sense for you. And maybe now you are leveling up. And you look in the mirror and you need a new community and a new tribe, a new squad around you. Healthier squad.
And I've been able to like find balance recently by not feeling like I need to manage other people's experiences. You know, it's like I've spent I've spent a lot of my energy worrying about whether people are okay with what I'm doing or feeling seen or heard by what I'm doing. And my intention will always be to be inclusive in that way, but it's not my responsibility to manage their experience. So it's just created a lot more space. It's a practice. I don't always follow it, but I remind myself often that that's something that can create more balance inside of me.
Let's give this lady a hand. That was insane. That was beautiful and insane, and I'm so thankful to know you, and your vulnerability and your power is just so apparent. So thank you so much for joining us. What we have now is you can get your books signed. We're all getting the books.
Woo! Put your face in that hole.
Put your face in
Please?
that damn hole.
I need to know more about that because I want one
I know,
for
so-
my house. For every guy that comes in.
Pay to play. So we get our book signed, say hi to Nicole, we can hang for a little bit, make sure you got your goodie bags. We also have, in talking about community, we have our ambassador group with almost 30 podcasts, Los Angeles. There's like 850 or so women.
Lauren, tell us the number.
884.
Nice. Wow.
So, yes, that's a lot of people. So those are all women that are down for the growth, down for the experience, down for the vulnerability. And Lauren and Alyssa back there do such a great job of stewarding great meetups all the time. Movies in the park, rage rooms. We do all the fun stuff. So
Where is one of those? I just went to one in New York.
You did?
Where you break stuff and throw
Yeah.
plates against the wall. Where is there
I'm
one
down.
in LA? Where? Okay.
Cool.
So make sure you join that, and we will see you next time. We
Love you.